What's good, y'all? It's Dave, and today I want to rank a new series that I haven't talked about yet. I just want to talk about this masterpiece of a series and how it definitely should be getting more love, and that series is no other than Dead Rising. Now, I was introduced to Dead Rising when I was like 10 or 11, and I played the very first Dead Rising title back in 2006 that was on the Xbox 360. But in my case, I played it on the Nintendo Wii. And when I say I was blown away beyond expectations, I truly was. You know, the sandbox environment, the exploration, the character interactions, and the actual very decent story for this game just exceeded all my expectations and solidified me as a fan. So that series also went on to expand multiple titles, and today we're going to rank them all from best to worst. So without further ado, let's start with the ranking. All right, you guys. So, you know the drill. We got our list laid out here. Of course, I do have a few titles in the never played section. All right, because this one was the Wii series, which I actually did play. This was the one I did play, but it's the exact same thing as Dead Rising 1. It's just, it had just been ported to the Nintendo Wii, which means that you can use the Wii remote and nunchuck to do actions instead of using a regular controller like Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, etc. So yeah, I did play this, but I'm just gonna set this aside because it's literally no different than Dead Rising. All right, so we're gonna start with Dead Rising 1. Obviously, this was S tier, and I'm pretty sure if you're a true fan of the series, then you would agree with me there. Okay, so yeah, like I said, the story was great. You play as Frank West here, the guy in the little cover art here, and basically he's a reporter. He has a new scoop, that he's trying to get from this situation that's happening in the city of Willamette. All right. And when he gets there, he sees that there's a zombie outbreak. The pilot that was piloting the chopper that brought him in, he said he'll be back in 3 days so that Frank West can get to the bottom of everything within 3 days. All right. But then also Frank West discovers that the army is going to bomb this city. All right, because they seen there was an outbreak there and he's trapped there. So basically, if he doesn't escape within 72 hours, he's going to get blown up. So he has to do what he can do within 72 hours to uncover the truth as to why this stuff happens. And depending on which ending you get, because what I like about this series is that there are different endings, and I love games like that. Depending on what ending you get depends on what you find out. There's an ending where, which is the canon ending where, you're trapped in a horde of zombies, and you and the survivor Isabel, who you meet, whose brother went on a psychotic rampage because he lost friends due to the scientists' experiments that led to the zombie outbreak. You are both just stranded, and then, Frank, the main character, he loses his mind. And then, yeah, that was literally the canon ending. And it was kind of like a cliffhanger ending. All right. But, there's other endings you can get. There's endings where, if you don't find out enough, you miss the chopper. You never get to escape Dead Rising. You're not seen again until later series. And it's just a very, very good expansive story, so I love Dead Rising. I loved the sandbox environment. You can use anything as a weapon. You can go change clothes. It was just very vibrant environment, the casinos and all the other stuff. So yeah, definitely S ranking for me, Dead Rising 1. Next, we have Dead Rising K0. Now, Dead Rising K0 was a prequel to Dead Rising 2. That's why it's called K0. All right, in K0, it was fine. There really wasn't much to do in the game, considering it's just a prequel to number 2, and you playing as Chuck Green, the famous motocross racer, you're trying to escape your hometown with your daughter, Katie, so that shows where they were before they ended up in the setting of Dead Rising 2. So, for what it was okay. It was short, of course, because, it's just a prequel. They couldn't really expand on too much. So I'm going to give it a B because, I love the fact that they made a prequel because I did want to know, and I'm sure many fans have wanted to know what happened and how did Chuck Green, the main protagonist from Dead Rising 2, get to where he was at. Well, Dead Rising 2 K0 would show that. All right, next we have Dead Rising 2. Now, Dead Rising 2, for me, I'm going to say this is very hard, man. All right, I'm going to say this was, I'm going to say this is S tier 2. I kind of wanted to put it in the 8 tier, so I probably should do that. You know what? Yeah, I'm gonna put this in A tier. Yeah, just to be safe for me personally, because as you can see, I had a hard time. Now, Dead Rising 2, it was great. It added more mechanics like combo weapons. You could find a workbench and make combo weapons. That was awesome. All right, so basically, Dead Rising 2 was where once again the main protagonist Chuck Green, he's being framed as the reason why the zombie outbreak came to the area that he's trapped in. All right, you have this wicked TV show host by the name of TK. He's making a reality game show out of killing zombies and stuff like that. He's the one, helping control the entire thing. Then there's a crooked sheriff who's also in on it, and you have interactions with him through the whole game, and then you actually end up having to fight him. All right. And yeah, the same thing's going to happen in this game, 72 hours until the army firebombs this entire place to cover up what's happening there. All right. And then in that 72 hours, you have that much time to clear your name, because like once again, Chuck Green was framed. And then there's another mechanic in this game where your daughter, Katie, she's infected and you have to find her zombrex every 24 hours. Otherwise, the game is going to go to game over because she's going to zombify. Okay. So yeah, the story was okay. It wasn't necessarily as good as Dead Rising 1 in my opinion, but Dead Rising 2 story, for what it was pretty good. There were more features. You could, you can now drive motor bikes across town and you can modify it, and, just chop zombies down, more psychopath fights. That's what they're called, better psychopath fights. I really love the psychopath fights in Dead Rising 2. So that's why it's going to go in the A tier for me. All right. Next we have Dead Rising 2 Case West. So now this is Case West. Basically what's happening now is that you're joining Frank West, okay, and you're Frank West again from Dead Rising 1, and he returns back to Willamette just to uncover more of the truth of what happened. All right, so basically when it's just a shorter spinoff, it's just him just trying to rediscover things, and you meet Chuck Green and he's there to assist you, so that's also good because this will take place after Dead Rising 2. All right. So this was good. I'm going to put this in the B tier though, because it did not hit my expectations like Dead Rising 2 and definitely not Dead Rising 1. Next, we have Dead Rising Off the Record. Now, Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, it's literally the same story as Dead Rising 2, the normal version, but just obviously with some plot alterations to fit Frank West in there. Now, this is literally Dead Rising 2 story, but except for Chuck Green, it's Frank West. So literally, it's basically just Frank West. What would you do if he was in the situation as Chuck Green in Dead Rising 2? Okay, so yeah, and one of the psychos, in Dead Rising 2, how you had that guy in the green motor suit that was always trying to challenge you and stuff and wanted to challenge you to a duel. Well, in Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, that psychopath is Chuck Green. So you have to fight Chuck Green, and because Chuck Green has been driven insane because his daughter died, that's why he carries a stuffed animal of his daughter, like a balloon of her on his back, and talks to her like it's his actual daughter. So yeah, he lost his mind in Dead Rising Off the Record. So it was nice to see those roles flipped, so that was very good. So I'm going to put that in A tier as well, because literally it's the same story, just with, alterations to fit Frank West in there. Next, we have Dead Rising 3. Now, Dead Rising 3, I'm not going to lie, you guys, I didn't really have a lot of fun with Dead Rising 3 because, the setting, it was nice to see that this was the first Dead Rising to come to the next gen of consoles, which at the time was Xbox One, PlayStation 4, etc. It was nice to see a new Dead Rising title, but, the main character really didn't do much for me. He's immune, and they try to use him, basically as a way to manufacture a cure and stuff like that. All right, so, that was pretty awesome. All right, so you do run into Chuck Green's daughter in this, and then you end up meeting Chuck Green as well years later. So this takes place in California, I believe. You're just a young mechanic, so yes, you can build weapons and make combo weapons because, he's, pretty handy. But other than that, the story didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I didn't really like it. It made sense, but I didn't like the story. It was just a lot of unnecessary things in the story that really, if I would have skipped over Dead Rising 3, I honestly would have never cared for it. But I did play it because, of course, I was a fan of the series, but I did not like Dead Rising very much. All right, so I'm going to put that actually on C tier because I didn't really like it very much. I know you guys are probably going to get mad. No, I'm going to move it back to B. I'm going to move it back to B. C, because I think C is left for Dead Rising 4. Now, Dead Rising 4, this takes place with Case West again, and he's just on his own adventure. I actually, I played it for a little bit, but I didn't even make it through the entire game because I was just bored, honestly. I'm be honest, I was just bored, you guys. I was very bored with Dead Rising 4. Okay, now I might just play it again now that I think about it, just to give it another chance. But I was very, very bored with this, and I'm gonna be very real. I was bored with it. Okay, but Dead Rising 4 is going in C tier for me. Next we have Next we have Dead Rising, the Deluxe Remaster. Now, this is a remaster of number 1, just with 4K graphics and stuff like that. The voice acting is the same. I just really wish they would have just remade the entire game, because all the graphical uphauls that this game has compared to its original in 2006. Obviously, 11 years later, of course they should, it should be good graphics by now, but I just really wish they would have just remade the game, new voice acting, new mechanics, because they did have new mechanics. They had an auto save mode, manual save mode, things like that. They're very good mechanics, and I did very much enjoy this game. But nothing will hit me like the original did. All right. So, yeah, but I loved the remake. It was just everything but better. So that's going in S tier for me. All right, guys, so there's my ranking for the Dead Rising series. Let me know. I know y'all might have some disagreements with this specific list. All right. And that's fair. Like I said, I struggled with where I wanted to put Dead Rising 3, and I struggled on where I wanted to put Dead Rising, the Deluxe Remaster. But let me know which one of these made you a fan of the series. Let me know which ones I should give a second chance. I'm always open to that. All right, because that's more content for you guys too, because I can play it on this channel. All right, but once again, y'all, that's going to do it for me. It's been Dave, and I'm out. Peace.